It was a little different.
If I could get all of y'all, excuse me, follow me around on this side.
You're on Inglewood.
Yeah, South Inglewood.
In fact, some of y'all that are coming up back towards the back, if you want to come around behind me on this side, I'm going to try and stand here in the middle. Some of y'all can even come around this way. I know they've got music on around the corner, and I don't want y'all not able to hear me. This is still what we consider our slow time of year for another couple of weeks. And I didn't even bring my microphone tonight, so I'm going to talk loud so y'all shouldn't have trouble hearing me. But we've been having anywhere from 10 to 15 people on the tours the last couple of weekends, so I don't usually have to have a microphone. And we've got a big group tonight. I think the full moon and the nice weather brought everybody out. Show of hands, how many of you have been on the Ghostwalk before here in Jefferson? Raise your hands. Okay, so probably almost half of you know what you've gotten yourself into. For those of y'all that haven't been before, I'm going to tell you what the tour is all about, what we're going to do tonight. Every tour, honestly, is a little different because sometimes it's just a tour where you get a lot of ghost stories, a lot of history, nothing strange or unusual happens. And then you have tours where people think they see things, they hear things, they get unusual pictures. They also all think that this is something that we just do every once in a while, every couple of weeks. This is a tour we do every Friday, Saturday night, year round. In fact, April will mark 18 years that we've been doing the Ghostwalk tour here in Jefferson. And I'm going to go ahead and warn you now, just because I'm leading the Ghostwalk doesn't mean I want to see anything, okay? I know some of y'all that have been before are already going, yep, I've seen her run. Yeah. There's nothing funnier than to see me run, y'all, but I promise you, I guarantee you, if something spooks me, I'm moving and you will have a hard time catching me. Yep. It's amazing how fast you can move when you need to. Yeah, and it's not a pretty picture, I promise you, but I can move. This is something I really enjoy doing. I love history, I love ghost stories. I've always been more of the skeptic. I think it has a lot to do with the way I was raised. There's no such thing as ghost. But I can honestly tell you, I've learned to be a little more open-minded maybe than I used to be, that there's not always a logical explanation for everything. And I will warn you, the ones that are looking for something to happen, it's not going to be you. Going to be the skeptic or the wise guy. So if you're the skeptic or the wise guy in the bunch, watch out. Your time's coming tonight. Remember, it's a full moon. We do have 2 different tour routes that we go on. And honestly, it depends on which locations I get access to. We normally go in the Kahn Saloon and the old mill building every tour. And then we have some private homes that we do occasionally every couple of weeks or months get access to. Being that we do this every Friday and Saturday night, we just can't go barging someone's home every Friday and Saturday night. But we're very lucky that most of our locations are very open to working with us. Now, tonight we're going to talk here at the old Kahn Saloon first. Is there anyone staying here at the Kahn Saloon? You would admit it now for nothing, would you? Okay. After we talk here, we're going to talk next at the Excelsior Hotel. Anyone at the Excelsior Hotel tonight? Yep. Okay. She wasn't going to admit it for a minute. You're screwed. Get a good look at them. We'll get down there. We may never see them again. We're also going to include the Schluter Mansion, the Kennedy Manor. I will briefly give some information on the old Hale House building. We will be going in and going through, again, like I said, the old mill building, which is further this direction. So someone had asked me if we go to the Grove property tonight. We won't be going as far as the Grove tonight, just for the fact that it's a pretty good distance the other way. And we've got to get all down to this direction. Normally, about a little over 2 hours on the amount of time for the tour. Each place you're going, you're getting real history, real ghost stories, and we're going to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 as to how haunted people would consider that location to be. All right? Hang on 1 second. I have a big mouth, but I didn't want to have to scream over the motorcycle. All right. The other thing I wanted to mention is most of the places that we go all have the state Texas historic marker as well. And one thing I want to start with, especially for those that haven't been to Jefferson, you really need to understand the history to understand why some of these places might be haunted for good reasons. So I'm going to give you a quick 30-second history lesson, and I'm going to try to give you as much history as I can in the short amount of time that I have at each location, so that it really makes an impression to you what's really behind these buildings, okay? The first thing I will start out with is Jefferson started bringing steamboats here in the early 1840s. They were going back and forth between Jefferson and New Orleans. The population at that time usually ranged between 10 and 15,000 people. Population here today is about 2,300 people. This was a regular riverfront town. I mean, half the places we're talking about on the tour tonight have all been cotton warehouses, saloons, brothels, banks, drugstores. During Reconstruction after the Civil War, there were several fires. One in 1869 burned over 30 buildings in the downtown area. They called it the $1 Million Fire. There are a lot of course, hangings and murders, and just like you would have in any old town's past. And I want to start out with one of those stories here. This is known as the old Kahn Saloon building. And this has been here since the 1860s, but there was actually a building here prior, early 1850s. And it's been a boarding house, it's been a furniture store, it's been an antique store, it was a local funeral home at one time. We know that the Masons and the Knights of the Rising Sun both used to meet in this building, and of course it's been several saloons. We have 3 documented murders and 2 suicides in this building. I will throw in, we have new owners that finished renovations just in the last couple of months, and they have added rooms where you can stay upstairs and downstairs now. I know a lot of y'all have been in the past, and you remember, and you can vouch for me, how dark and dingy and eerie and creepy this building was. If you wanted a perfect picture of a haunted building, it would have been this one. We would often even go in with just flashlights and lanterns because they would try and work on the building, and they wouldn't have electricity in certain areas because they couldn't even keep contractors working in here because of the stuff that went on. And we've convinced the new owner pretty quick that his building's haunted. You know, you buy a building, they say it's haunted. Oh yeah, right, sure it is. He will no longer stay upstairs in his own building anymore. Tell you about that in a little bit. But a lot of history here. 1885, at the very back of the building on this corner, they found a man hanging with his hands tied behind his back. Now you did hear what I said. His hands were tied behind his back, and they ruled it a suicide. Stop and think about that for just a few minutes. Probably was not a suicide. 1893, this was known as the Castleberry Saloon and Billiard Parlor. The man that owned it had a brother-in-law by the name of Bob Slaughter that he didn't get along with. Bob and Bob couldn't stand each other. And it was said that they were normally fighting and quarreling over the way Slaughter treated his wife, which happened to be Castleberry's sister. One afternoon, they get into this heated argument. Of course, Slaughter, being the bad guy, whips out his pistol, and he ends up fighting for the gun. Owner of the building, Castleberry, shoots and kills his brother-in-law just inside this back entrance of the building. So that's another documented murder. Now, I don't know if y'all were paying attention before the tour. You've got 2 historic markers on the right and the left side of the building. The one on the right side talks about someone by the name of Marian Slaughter. Marian Slaughter was the son of the man that was murdered in the back of this building. He later changed his name to Vernon Dalhart after Vernon, Texas and Dalhart, Texas, and became one of this country's first country music singers. In fact, he was the first country artist to sell over 1 million copies of a song known as the Prisoner Song. And occasionally on tours, we'll play the music, especially when you're inside, just to kind of give people a listen to what it sounded like. And I don't know if it's pure coincidence or if there's some kind of connection. That honestly seems to be the times that we have more activity going on in this building. Now, they completed the mural here a couple of months ago. You can see where they do have Vernon Dalhart on the mural. You have the noose coming down the middle. Over here on the far left, you see the ghostly figure coming out of the megaphone on Patrola. And then over here on the right, I didn't notice this for weeks, y'all. It's kind of hard to see because it's dark. But if you look in that window in the top left-hand pane, you see the face of a ghostly woman. And the reason why they painted her into that particular window is because that is one of the oldest stories they have in this building, people claiming to see a woman. They've gotten photographs, I'm talking 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, of a woman that they would see in the top windows here. And so, like I said, we could be here all night telling stories on this building, but I'm going to talk quick because I'm going to give you another quick history, and then we're going to get to the ghost stories. And I think we have, even though we've got about 40 people, I think we have a small enough group that I can actually share a picture or 2 before we move. I don't keep a lot of pictures on my phone, but I've got some pretty interesting things from this building that I would like for you to see before we move to the next one. But I want to share one more quick history story. In 1904, this was known as the old Kahn Saloon, and that's what, they call it today. Kind of the same scenario. A man here in Jefferson was always in trouble with the law. His name was A.B. Allen, and he'd been shooting his mouth off telling people that he was going to shoot and kill the sheriff's deputy that always arrested him. He thought he was being picked on. He thought he was being harassed. Well, when the deputy, a man by the name of William Griffin, got wind of this, he was concerned for his own safety because he knew A.B. Allen was a nut. And he started carrying around a double-barrel sawed-off shotgun with him. The story is he walks by the bar one night, looks into the window. It's like a free-for-all in there. Everybody in the bar is trying to knock this joker, A.B. Allen, off the pool table because he had taken a $10 bill, threw it on the pool table and stood on it, told everybody in the bar if they could knock him off the pool table, they could have that $10 bill. So deputy steps in, tells him to get off the pool table and consider himself under arrest, and he told him no. He said, look, I don't know who you think you're talking to. I'm not going to tell you but 2 times. Come off that pool table and come with me. This man started reaching for his gun, so from the doorway, sheriff's deputy opened fire with that double-barrel sawed-off shotgun, and we all know what happens when you get shot from 5 or 6 feet away with a sawed-off shotgun. And evidently, this man already had every intention of shooting and killing the deputy because before he hit the ground in there, he'd also fatally shot and killed the deputy. So that's 2 more murders that we've talked about in this building. I'm thinking that's good reasons why they got a lot of stories here. Now, things that you normally hear about being associated with a haunted location, you have here, okay? You have the phantom footsteps. You know you're here alone and you're walking in the hallway at night. The feeling of not being alone, even when you know that you are. Catching glimpses at the corner of your eye, out of your peripheral vision. Women, more than men, talk about this, but it's happened many times on tours. You're standing there, no one's 5, 6 feet away from you, and you feel somebody walk by you. The breeze, the motion, the movement. Some people have gone as far as to say it feels as if someone's come up and kind of pulled on your shirt tail or the side of your pant leg, and you look down, and of course there's nobody there, nothing there. And I'll start out with this. We had a lady one night. She was standing next to me, and we, of course, had our lanterns on, and she starts hollering, there's somebody pulling on my necklace. I said, honey, there is nobody pulling on your necklace. And I just kind of shined my flashlight around to show her it was okay. Y'all, this woman's necklace was standing straight up, just like this. And everybody in the place, you could hear, and I know it was a matter of seconds, y'all, but I'm telling you, this necklace just went, whoop, dropped to her chest. You've never seen people get out of a building so fast in your life. Okay, now that's a minor incident because this is what we consider a very active location. Things go on in here all the time. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'll go ahead and tell you before I even tell you the ghost stories, this one's definitely at 10, all right? And I'm gonna kind of jump the gun. I wanna tell this real quick because this happened just in the last couple of weeks. The apartment up here is beautiful, okay? The owner had it so he could stay in it, on occasion. And for a while there, he had been staying up there full time. And he does not live up there anymore. He's bought a house, but he doesn't live up there anymore because of stuff that was going on. Very first night he stayed, it was a weeknight, nobody here, walking in the hallway. He has a massive security system. He had the camera pointing right at his door. He could hear someone knocking on his door, and there was no one there. So that unnerved him a little bit, but the kicker was he had an Echo Dot just in the last month sitting in his window, the front of the building. The Echo Dot flew out of the window, hit 2 vases on the table in front of it, broke them, flew on into the galley kitchen, hit the refrigerator, and landed in front of the floor right there. They said the next day his computer and his clothes were packed and he was gone. So definitely made a believer out of the new owner, but we were up there telling stories because when they don't have guests, we do get to go in and share the stories in the building. And as we're standing there, I hear a chair pull out. You hear people were sitting down and standing. I wasn't thinking anything of it, and they all started hollering and screaming because the chair had actually pulled away from the table, like someone had pulled it out to sit down, and it wasn't just a little scoot. It moved out about this far, just literally pulled up by itself. So yes, we have weird stuff that happens sometimes that we cannot find logical explanations for, as try as I might. But we were upstairs, and this was back when the previous owner had it, and it was very dark, and it was winter, it was cold, probably 20 degrees outside. I had on a very big coat. And as we're standing up there in the dark, I feel this very hard pulling or tugging on my jacket. I mean, kind of pulled me sideways like this. Oh yeah, I screamed like an idiot. I look down, this poor kid is trying to tell me something. And I'm thinking, I have probably scarred this kid for life. And I was finishing up with my stories, and then afterwards I was letting people walk around and take pictures. And the dad came back around to me and he said, excuse me, do you want to know what he was trying to tell you? And I said, well, sure, what? He said, the minute that we walked into the room we were in, he said a man he couldn't see whispered in his ear wanting to know what we were doing in there because he didn't want us in there. Now, they always talk about seeing two particular men. One downstairs in the front, not very tall for a man, maybe 5 feet, wears a brown tweed suit and a little derby hat like you might see worn at the turn of the century. They also see a man upstairs and downstairs, completely opposite description. He's very tall, probably 6'4", 6'5", wears a long duster-type jacket with his pants tucked in his boots. Now, everybody always asks me who it is that they're seeing in here. Well, I'm going to tell you real fast, Jody does not talk to the spooks, okay? I tell the stories. I have no clue who they're supposed to be or why they're here. But they do have an idea who the tall man might be. There was a story I'd always heard, but I didn't have a lot of info on it. The 4th great-granddaughter of this particular gentleman finally sent me the book. And I've got a photograph of a man by the name of James Wardell Gorman. He was shot and killed on Christmas Eve, 1872, in front of the saloon. It said that they carried his body across the street to the hotel where he was pronounced deceased. The man that was accused of murdering him was tried and convicted. But we have a photograph of this man, and he's sitting there with his leg propped up. And of course, everybody back in those days probably wore long duster-type jackets with their pants tucked in their boots. But he looks like a very, very tall man. Now, the other thing that I'll throw in is we had a photo taken about 12 years ago in this building as we were leaving one night. The owner's standing there waiting on us to leave so we can lock the door. Somebody snaps a picture, and right beside the owner, about a foot back, there was absolutely no one standing there by him. But in the photograph, you can actually see in the hall right behind him, right beside him there, a man with a beard, and he's kind of got his head down like he's looking up at you like this, like, okay, I think it's time for y'all to go. And we immediately see it when the woman took the picture, and we're looking up and we're like, oh my goodness, do you see this? And he said, that looks like other photographs that people have captured in here before. But when you compare that picture to James Wardell Gorman's picture, it looks like the same person. It's pretty wild. So I'm gonna let y'all look at that. I'm going to share one other thing. We had 2 sociology professors from Baylor University get permission to spend the night upstairs. They were writing a book on culture about how things being haunted make people think and react. They didn't think it was haunted. Well, guess who left at 4 o'clock in the morning because they scared themselves stupid? And back when they stayed, that's when the other guy had it. It was dark and dingy and pretty creepy up there. But they sent me a copy of the book in the mail, and guess what the very first chapter in that book was on? This building. Now, there's a photograph that I'm going to show you. It was taken last summer. It was still daylight. We were just inside the back entrance, and it was a weeknight. I was actually doing a private tour for a group of about 10 people. Little boy snaps the photo. I see the flash go off. About 2 or 3 seconds later, his mother said, I am so sorry to interrupt you. Will you please come look at this picture? Because I'm really skeptical, okay? Somebody sends me a picture, I'm thinking, oh yeah, they photoshopped that so they can have a story to tell. When you're standing right next to someone and you see the picture taken, it's a little harder to sometimes come up with a logical explanation. But y'all, it looks like a blood stain in the floor. And we took photograph after photograph after photograph. Nothing was there. I didn't notice this either till someone brought it to my attention months and months later. The blood stain almost looks like it's in the shape of a V, the way it's laid out. They always have jokingly called the ghost in this building Billy. And that's because people say that they know his name was Billy. Well, what do you call someone named William? The deputy that was shot and killed in this building, William Griffin. So I don't know if that means anything either, but I thought I'd point that out because it's kind of neat when you look at it. Last story, and then I'm going to let you look. We had a group of ladies last September. It was myself and 10 older women. We were upstairs in the very back of this building on this end where the hanging took place. And we were trying to get some photographs, and they couldn't take a picture. Their cameras wouldn't work. It has never happened before. It's never happened since. But we took photograph after photograph. If you tried to videotape, it would turn on and cut off, turn on and cut off. if you turned and faced the other end of the hallway, you could get a picture. You could get video footage. But when you tried to do it at that end of the building, you couldn't get anything. So I even take my phone out because I think they're all crazy. Mine wouldn't work either. I get home from the Ghostwalk tour. My husband thought I had lost my mind because he is not into the ghost stuff. I had 20 1, and 2, and 3 second clips on my phone where my phone would start recording and it would cut off. I looked at every one of them, nothing. I get to the very last one and I really wish I had just deleted it. I've played it 100 times since then and it still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. You can hear me say, see, it's still not letting me record anything, but it cuts off on me before I even finish saying it. What you hear before that is going to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up because you can hear what to me sounds like an old man laughing. It's kind of like y'all are getting pictures up here tonight. And I'm telling you right now, this was the quietest bunch of women I've ever had on a tour in my life. And nobody was laughing, so I have no explanation for this. I want y'all to scoot up just a little bit. I'm going to do it several times so that everybody can hear it. I'll kind of come around and replay it so everybody can hear. If you don't want to hear it, plug your ears because I'm going to do it several times, all right? And I want you to listen. Here we go. I'll come over that way too, just a minute.
I heard it.
Can you hear it all the way over there?
Yeah, you can hear it.
See, try it this way. Could y'all hear it way back there? Yeah. Okay, I'll do it one more time. Y'all get one more time, y'all get real quiet. So, there are things that happen that you're not going to find explanations for. Now, what I'm going to do, I know we've got a lot of people. I'm going to kind of pull this up. I'm going to show the bloodstained picture first. And if it happens to go off, let me know and I'll push the button again. I will tell you that most of the pictures that I share with y'all on the Ghostwalk should be on our Facebook page. If you type in Historic Jefferson Ghostwalk Tour on Facebook, you can go down the timeline and actually see all of these pictures yourself. Now, what did I tell you? Does that not look like a bee?
Yeah, it's like a bee.
And even though I was there when the picture was taken, I did send this off to several people so they could analyze the photograph. And they explained to me, because of the way everybody looks a little out of focus in the back when the kid took the picture, they do not feel that this is a photoshopped photo. Well, duh, I didn't think it was either, but I was trying to have them convince me it was.
We didn't see it.
I'm sorry, hon.
No, it's okay. We're just trying to break her neck. Oh, yeah.
Yep. All right. Now, I'm going to show this real quick. This is James Wardell Gorman. This is the man that was shot and killed in 1872, Christmas Eve here at the hotel. I mean, at the building, which I guess it is a hotel now. Can y'all see that? Like I said, these are all on Facebook, so don't feel neglected if you don't get a really good look. I know it's kind of time consuming when we got a lot of people, but it's kind of fun to get to see something too. Okay. Now what I'm going to show you on this one, now when I say I've got pictures later on that I'm going to show you, they're really, really good. To me, this one is not a good picture because I always say you can make yourself see something if you want to see something bad enough. But we've blown the picture up of the owner standing there. He's in the bottom right of the picture, and this is the hallway behind him. And I've got it right next to James Wardell Gorman's picture. But look in that red circle and see if you don't see a man's face with a beard.
Just Ozzy.
That's perfect timing, huh?
Yeah.
We're all crazy.
Oh my God.
Y'all see that back there? Like I said, you can, and I'll show this I'll give y'all a potty break in a little while. If somebody wants to see these that didn't get a good look, I'll show them to you again. But in the red circle is where you're supposed to be looking to see if you see a face. All right. Oh yeah, he pulled it up. Oh, that's even that's a different one even. Yeah, that's the Jefferson. All right. Anybody have any quick questions? Okay, I get a little long-winded here. We're going to start moving. Like I said, we're going to go talk at the Excelsior next. We'll go up to the top to the Schluter Mansion, then at the Kennedy Manor, and then we'll head on back this way. I will give y'all a potty break, a chance to get a drink if you need to, at the general store before we head down and go in and go through the old mill, because you do want to get in the old mill and have to go to the bathroom. Secondly, about month and a half, 2 months ago, I spooked myself down there, and I don't spook easy. And weekend before last, I spooked myself down there. So y'all are very lucky that I'm even going to take y'all in there tonight. But we're going. And it's a full moon still. Y'all know about the full moons, right? Full moons, new moons, right before thunderstorms. It's supposed to be the best time to experience stuff, so they say. All right, follow me this direction, and if you're staying at the Excelsior, you have to get right up by the front doors by me. We want to look at your face. You're noise, all right? Let me ask this while everybody's walking up. Is there anyone on the tour tonight that stayed here before?
I have.
You have? Did you have anything happen?
No, not at all.
This is where I get some really good stories sometimes. People go, yeah, we had something happen.
No.
All right, I'm going to start out with a little bit of the quick history. This is obviously the Excelsior Hotel, but it's the oldest hotel in East Texas. It's the second oldest in the state. The oldest would be the Manor in San Antonio. And it's been in continuous operation since it was built. Hang on, I'll pause for the motorcycle to the back. Are y'all able to hear me back in the back? I am so sorry I didn't bring my microphone tonight. I didn't think I was going to need it. If you have trouble hearing me, let me know, okay? Anyway, this, as I was saying, is the oldest hotel in East Texas, second oldest in the state. Oldest would be the Manor in San Antonio. Captain Perry, the man responsible for bringing the first steamboat to Jefferson, built the hotel with his wife. And the oldest section is what we're standing in front of right here that runs east and west. They call this the historic wing. The brick wing down here where you walk in the front door, they call that the new wing. But if you look on the historic marker, that was added on in 1864. So technically, it's not new either. It's just newer than the historic wing, okay? And the most talked about room in this hotel is going to be room 215. The very end, upstairs on this side, they call it the J. Gould Room. Now, one thing I will specify, because I know we have some at the Jefferson too, Jefferson Hotel across the street is very open to talking about and disclosing their ghost stories. There's a lot of hype. The Excelsior, on the other hand, is owned and operated by a group of garden club ladies, and they really don't like the stigma of being a haunted hotel. You go up to the front desk and ask them if the hotel is haunted. Oh no, honey, you're thinking about the Jefferson Hotel across the street. We don't have any ghosts here. Wrong. I have worked at both hotels, not in a very long time. Friends of mine from Houston owned that in the 90s. I managed it for them for about 8.5 years. This hotel I worked at in the 1980s. In fact, I used to have to spend the night on Monday and Tuesday nights. And Monday and Tuesday in Jefferson, no pun intended though, are dead. There ain't nobody here. And you have to spend the night whether you have guests or not. Coming from the skeptic, I'm going to tell you this hotel on a scale of 1 to 10 is going to be rated about a 15. This place is something else. Now, as I mentioned, 215 is the Jay Gould Room. Of course, Jay Gould was the railroad tycoon. He's infamous in Jefferson's history because he wanted to put the trains here when they had steamboat traffic. City leaders could have cared less whether he put the train here or not. And he is said to have left pretty disgruntled with the city. When he checked out of the hotel, there in the guest register where he had signed in, on the bottom of the page, he wrote the end of Jefferson, Texas. Said that grass would grow in the streets and bats would roost in the belfries, putting a so-called curse on the town. So there's always been a lot of hype with Jay Gould. Now that room has a rocking chair that rocks back and forth by itself. Probably the most talked about story in that room is going to be the Steven Spielberg story. Way back in the early 70s, long before he was well known like he is today, he was here on a Monday night scouting out locations for the movie Sugarland Express, which was one of his first movies. They had given him room 215, and he said he threw his briefcase into the rocking chair and threw it back out at him. He said the whole time he was here, he was uncomfortable because it felt as if someone was watching him or following him everywhere he went. He said he finally managed to go to sleep, but sometime after midnight he wakes up and he said there's a little boy standing at the foot of the bed asking him if he's ready for breakfast. He said, that's it, we are out of here. They get up in the middle of the night, go to Marshall and get a motel room in Marshall. Now you can actually Google his name and Excelsior Hotel and it should pull up. There's 2 different interviews with him where you can actually listen to his version. He goes into a little more detail than I do on the stories, but it's fun to listen to after you've been on the tour and heard our stories. Now, I will share one more thing in that room. We had two women that had had dinner. One of them hadn't felt good. They came back to the room and pretty much went to sleep early. And the lady that had been ill had gotten up and was walking around the room. And she had come over and sat down on the foot of her friend's bed. And she kind of sat up and she asked her, are you okay? She didn't say anything. And she said, well, do you need me to go get you a Sprite or a Coke or something, And she didn't say anything. And she said, I just got a really weird, eerie feeling. And all of a sudden, she just kind of hollered at her, would you answer me? You're scaring me. What's wrong with you? From the other bed, the friend hollered back over at her, I'm fine. I feel a lot better. What are you hollering at me for? She's like, you're not sitting on the foot of my bed. And she's like, no, I'm not. So people all the time say it feels as if someone comes over and sits down on their foot of the side of the bed. It kind of gives way. Another thing that seems to be popular at haunted locations, you talk about, someone smelling cigar smoke, cigarette smoke, pipe smoke when no one's smoking. And I can vouch for that. I was staying here one night. We had absolutely no guests. I had gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I'm walking across my own room. This is not like the scent of maybe somebody smoking out here on the porch where the, smell would kind of come through a window or something. It was as if someone had just walked up to me and blew a whole mouthful of pipe smoke in my face. It was a very old-fashioned, like cherry-smelling pipe tobacco. My uncle used to smoke a pipe, and I hate to say I thought it smelled good, but it smelled good. I love the smell of pipe tobacco. And that was, it was like I ought to be seeing smoke in front of my eyes. That's how thick it smelled to me. So how do you explain it? You can't. But I can say I smelt it, and I don't know how I smelt it and why I smelt it, but I did. There have only been 2 men that have owned this hotel. One being Perry that built it. The other was a man named George Niedermeyer back in the 1920s. This has always been owned by women. There was a lady from Germany that had married an American. She owned it alone because he passed away before they arrived here. Her name was Kate Wood, and when she died, she left it to her daughter. Now, I'm going to throw this in about Kate Wood because she was a little bit quirky for a woman in that time period in Jefferson. You just didn't openly see women drinking in Jefferson. But she used to send one of her servants around the corner to the Rosebud Saloon. She'd get her a pitcher of beer, and she'd sit out in front of this hotel and drink her a pitcher of beer at night. So I guess she was a very entertaining hotel owner. But the other thing I wanted to throw in is I was closing up one night. We didn't have guests. I had locked the front door probably 2 hours prior, but I still had the balcony door open upstairs, and I was just kind of rechecking stuff. I had locked the balcony. And as I'm walking back down the hallway to come downstairs, I hear muffled conversation. I could hear a man and a woman. And I stopped and I listened and I thought, I know there's nobody in here. Did I lock somebody out there that I didn't know was here? So of course I go outside and look, there's nobody there. I lock the door back, I come back in, start back down the hall, and I could definitely hear this conversation. Totally had me spooked. And it sounded as if it was coming from up above me. I was on the 2nd floor. The attic in this building's about that tall. So I couldn't explain somebody getting something out of the attic, moving around up in there. I have no explanation for what I heard, but I can tell you that the woman's voice, I really strained and tried to decipher something. I could not. It was too muffled, but you could definitely tell that the woman had an accent. And I was telling people I was hearing like a Russian or German type accent. And didn't think about it for months later, and I was sharing the story with somebody, and they're stopping me going, well, Kate Wood was from Germany, right? I'm thinking, no, I didn't even think about that. So probably nothing to do with the other, but I just thought I'd throw that in because you never know. It makes you stop and take a minute. Now, one more story, and this is going to be in what is known as the Presidential Suite. They used to rent it out as 2 big rooms. Now they rent it out, as 1 big room. Now they rent it as 2 rooms. And it's the Hayes and the Grant room, named after both presidents that spent the night here. And the Grant room has an oval mirror that stands in the corner of the room. It's about probably this tall. It was given in exchange for a night stay back in the 1800s. People claim to see the reflection of a man in the mirror. And I'm not talking about this ghostly, wispy image that you kind of envision when someone tells you there's a ghost there. It looks like a man. It looks like a real person standing there. He's got dark hair, receding hairline, a dark mustache. He's wearing a suit. People that have claimed to witness this say that he absolutely is there, but he slowly just dissipates right in front of you. It's kind of funny when you read the journals they leave in the rooms too, because people in that room will tell you, just cover it up with a sheet and leave it covered up until you check out the next morning because you don't want to look in the mirror. Now, my favorite room is the Hayes room. And that's the one, of course, right next to it. Beautiful antique bed, the great big pillar post, big canopy on the top of it. And stories have always been people wake up at night because they can hear someone talking to them, whispering, humming, singing. And when you're finally fully awake, alert in the bed, sitting up, going, wait a minute, where is this coming from? It stops. So you think you dreamed it, you imagined it, you heard somebody in the hallway, maybe the next room, you kind of blow it off and you forget about it. Well, there was a man, and this is a very old story, and I tell it every Ghostwalk, so if you've been, I know you've heard it, but it's one of my favorites. A guy that used to write for the Dallas Morning News years and years and years and years ago. He had always wanted to come to the Excelsior because of the history of it being haunted. Had finally convinced his wife to spend the night, and he said, I'll be darned if we didn't get this Hayes room. He said, here I am, sound asleep. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I hear this very soft female humming. He said, this is why I'm here. I'm waiting on something to happen. He said, I hear somebody humming at me. He said, I am scared to death. He said, I'm laying there like a dummy with my eyes shut. And he kept telling himself, you're a grown man, sit up in this bed and look and see if there's anybody in here. And he said he finally sat up, and he's looking down towards the foot of the bed. And he describes a very petite woman wearing a long, light-colored gown. Said her hair was pulled back up on top of her head, probably kind of like what I got mine. And when he really started looking, he said his wife was standing down there, just humming her little heart out. He said, I felt like the biggest fool. He starts hollering her, what's the matter with you? Are you crazy? I can't believe you just pulled that on me. You knew I was waiting on something to happen. You just scared me half to death. Well, he rolls over in the bed to go back to sleep, and his wife's in the bed sound asleep right beside him. So whoever he saw standing over at the foot of the bed wasn't Mama. And y'all, it's pretty comical, the number of people that don't want to stay at the Jefferson Hotel. It's haunted. So they're coming over here where they're going to tell you, oh no. And then they come down with these same wild stories just like everybody else does. It is absolutely a beautiful, elegant old hotel. But it has definitely got the ghost stories. And I could be here. This is another one. Some places have a couple stories. This one's got story after story after story after story. So I'm anxious to see if anybody has a story to tell tomorrow. Have y'all stayed here before? No. Did you stay last night?
No.
You stayed one night or two? One night. That's probably a good move. So you're gluttons for punishment because you did know it was haunted.
Yes.
All right, well, we'll see what happens for y'all. Get a good look at them now, y'all, all right? All right, quick question. Anybody have any questions for me? Okay, I want to throw one more thing and then we're headed this direction. People often ask me about the old cemetery here. The Oakwood Cemetery is a beautiful old cemetery. There is a lot of really interesting stories. There are outlaws buried out there. They, of course, have Civil War soldiers buried out there. There is a riverboat captain's wife that's buried sitting up in her rocking chair. A lot of interesting stories, okay? But there's one that I'm going to share real quick. We don't ever do tours during this ghost walk at the cemetery because there's a city ordinance. They shut the gates at sundown. They don't open them until sunrise. But I like to throw in here and there a story when I can because there's so many. And this one ties in to the old saloon that we were just standing in front of at the beginning of the tour, the old Kahn Saloon. There were two men here in Jefferson. One's last name was Rose. The other one's last name was Robertson, and they were not very well liked in town, so they pretty much hung around with each other. One of them was a blacksmith and worked where the bakery restaurant is down here on the corner. And they had gotten into an argument one afternoon about going to have a shot of whiskey. Evidently, Robertson wanted to quit drinking, and Rose was wanting to go have some booze. So they're arguing over going to have this shot of whiskey when it kind of escalates into them arguing over a woman that worked at the Kahn Saloon. And they, like I said, argued back and forth for a little while, and one is on one corner, the other one's on the opposite corner. Rose pulls out his gun. They said the gun discharged, and they don't think he had any intention of shooting and killing his friend, but it hit him. So the other guy returned fire. They shot and killed each other right here in the middle of the street. And the city had to pay to bury him. Like I said, they had no family, no friends. It was just the two of them. And where they're buried out at the old Oakwood Cemetery, you can right out there and see it. You've got two iron posts about this big around, and they're not very high up. They're low to the ground. There's one here and one here. There's a chain that connects the two of them, and that's supposed to signify chained together for eternity because they are actually buried chained together. They're not side by side. They're not just thrown in the same hole. They're actually chained together in the same hole. So how would you like to be buried chained to the man that shot and killed you? So that is one of hundreds of stories from the old cemetery here, but that's the story of Rosen Robertson. Want to throw that one in. Okay, head this direction, y'all follow me.
Smoke earlier,
We're on
but
the
there was,
Did you?
and there was nobody who smoked.
Yeah,
We were
she's like-
in the hamburger
And
shop.
yeah, she was asking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, do you smell that? It smells like smoke.
But nobody else smelled
They're all
it.
thinking
Oh, my
I'm crazy here.
Uh-huh.
We're
Well,
like,
maybe
I
not.
smell smoke.
That's pretty interesting. Ooh.
I also wanted to ask, why did they chain them together?
You know, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if they did it kind of, I thought it was funny, kind of out of spite kind of thing. But they chained them together for eternity, yeah.
That's nice.
There's actually a book in town, but I know it doesn't still share that story either. There's a book you can buy at several places. It's called The Angels of Oakwood, and it tells a lot of the stories from the cemetery in it. If you're really into the history stories, yeah.
I went to the cemetery earlier today.
Oh, okay. She's got a picture on her phone if you want to know what it looks like where they're buried. Yep. Just two poles in the chain, two iron posts. Oakwood Cemetery is just off of Alley Street. It's several blocks. It's probably about 10 blocks from here. But like I said, a word of warning, y'all listen up. I know a lot of times people, even though I say, oh, the cemetery closes at sundown, sometimes people ride by there just to look so they can go in the morning, know where it's at or whatever, and they find the gates open. That is because we have several new policemen that often forget to lock them until they ride by and go, oh man, we didn't lock the gates. And they have locked several people in the cemetery at midnight. So it's got big, 15-foot iron gates. So if you ever go by and the gates are open, make sure you park it where they can't lock you in, all right? Because they will do it because they don't have a clue you're in there. All right. Next thing that we're going to do, as I said, we're going to talk at the old Schluter Mansion. I do have a photograph that I would like to show you when we get there. It's going to be 2 blocks up the top of the hill, just the big white house. After we leave there, we're going to come back around, come down the other hill, and head back the other direction. But I'm going to share right here where we are about the Kennedy Manor, which is across the street. I also want to point out the library. This is the Carnegie Library. It was put in 1907. This is supposed to be one of 5 original Carnegie libraries in Texas that are actually still used as libraries. A lot of the buildings are still there, but they're used for something else. This one has always been and is still a library. The fountain that's in the middle of the road, that's called Stern Fountain. It was named after a family that lived here in the 1850s, but it was put in 1913. And that's supposed to be Hebe, the Greek goddess of youth, on the top of it. You have the big urns on the side. That's for like horses to drink out of. Around the base on the bottom, they have little bitty urns, and that was supposed to be for small animals like cats and dogs. Or as the old carriage guy in town used to tell everybody, the cats, dogs, and drunks drank out of the ones on the bottom. And they used to do an event here in the 1800s. It was a Mardi Gras event, but they called it the Queen Mab. Well, back about 30 years ago now, they reinstated doing a Mardi Gras event in Jefferson, and they always do it the weekend before Fat Tuesday in New Orleans. And they named themselves, the crew here did, after the fountain, so it's the crew of Hebe. Now, I will warn you, at Mardi Gras, I have taken pictures of this poor fountain wearing a cone on the top of her head, a construction cone. She's been decorated, so bless her heart, Hebe the fountain has been through it. But why we're really here is not about the fountain or the library. I want to share about the Kennedy Manor, which is across the street. Kennedy Manor is a bed and breakfast. We have new owners that purchased it last January, so they've had it just a little over a year again, running it as a B&B. It was built in the 1860s as a 1-story home. A lot of families owned it from the time it was built until 1902. In 1902, the family that bought it added the 2nd level, and they opened it up as a boarding house. When the people that had it died, they left it to their daughter and her husband, and they owned it for a very long time. A Mr. and Mrs. Kennedy moved into the boarding house in 1927, and they were very good friends with the family that owned the home. And ends up that the woman, when she died, after her husband passed away and then she died, she left the house to Mrs. Kennedy. And men bought it back in the late 1980s to renovate the home and turn it into a bed and breakfast. They bought the little white house back here behind the main house so that Mrs. Kennedy could continue to live on the property until she died, which she did. She lived on the property for over 60-something years. And, it was called Roseville Manor for a long time. And then other families have bought it and they took back the original name, the Kennedy Manor. So it's been a bed and breakfast off and on for the last 30 years, okay? What I wanted to share was one thing that happened back when they first bought it to turn it into Roseville Manor. Mrs. Kennedy was actually working with them to try to get it back to as close to the original as they could, the coloring, the wallpaper, things like that. One thing that they had to do was to totally redo the phone system, okay? It had an ancient 1940s, 1950s phone line. And I don't know what it is about phones. I've heard a lot of ghost stories that have to do with phones, but they had put their new phones in. About 3 days later, they're eating dinner and the phone rings. He runs over, picks it up. It's got a dial tone. And he's listening and there is a phone ringing. He said it had a really weird sound though. He said it was almost like an old bicycle bell. And they're thinking that there's a ringer on the porch by one of the doors, that someone's ringing a doorbell. It's not even a phone. And they are going all over this place trying to figure out where the sound is coming from. And he said that they had noticed little stuff, when they first bought it, happening, strange things, the footsteps we've kind of talked about. And they always blew it off, laughed about it. Oh, it's nothing, Well, when they're trying to figure out where this phone's coming from, they walk past what is now the library. And there's all those old phones lined up against the wall. Thank the Lord none of them are ringing. But there's a bunch of boxes in there they hadn't unpacked, and he said there's a box of books, and on top of one of those stack of books was this old phone. And he said, I'm looking at it. He said, I can see the cord hanging out of that box. Would I have picked that phone up? No. He goes over and answers the phone. And he didn't hear someone, he heard static. He said it was a very loud, kind of staticky sound. He said he slammed the phone down, picked it back up, dead as a doorknob. He said that is what really set his mind to say, maybe there really is something to these stories and these things we've had going on. So there have always been little stories here. We were very lucky in the fall that we were able to use this home as one of our nighttime locations. Every spring and fall we do a special event called History Haunts and Legends. And during the daytime, they've got speakers and vendors and things going on at the visitor center. But at night, you're divided into groups. And you actually get to go into 5 different places where they have paranormal teams stationed. They come from all over the country to do this. It's really cool, and it's usually places that we have there's 2 places that's going to be on the April 7 event that I have tried now for 10 years to get into. We finally got into them, so we're real excited. So it's a lot of fun, but this was one of the places that we got to use. And I can say rating this one on a scale of 1 to 10, I would normally rate it at about a 6 because things happen. It just doesn't happen all the time. But I rated it up to about an 8 now because they did actually capture some pretty unique things, and we're going to be posting it on our timeline so you can go check out the pictures and some of the stuff that they've actually captured here. So I wanted to throw that in. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to try and not walk too fast. I apologize, I do have a habit of walking fast, but we're going to go up to the top of the hill. When we're almost at the top, I'm going to stop and point out a historic marker to you, and then we're going to stop at the Schluter Mansion, all right? Follow me this direction. Okay, I think we got everybody together now. What I want to point out is the historic marker over here. I know some people are more into the history, some people are more into the ghost stories, so I always try and give a little bit of both. But the marker there is about a man. His name was William Smith. He was what was known after the Civil War as a carpetbagger. And he was here stirring up trouble. And he had some men that were always kind of running around with him. And he had shot and killed somebody, and what he said was self-defense. Well, they were concerned for this man's safety because they figured somebody was going to take him out. And the men that were with him were also locked up. They locked them all up together. Now, at the side of this house, at the very back corner, the backyard backs up to the back of what is known as the Hale, H-A-L-E, the Hale House. That is where the city jail used to be. They called it the city calaboose, and a lot of the information is on the marker here. It was October of 1869. They had placed guards around the building for protection. 120-something men broke into the jail that night. They shot and killed William Smith. He didn't go anywhere. The other men had managed to escape, and they found 2 of them hiding up at the Schluter property, which is where we're heading now, in a stable. And they caught the other guy somewhere else, but they marched all of them down past the Grove property, down Mosley Street to the end where 59 is now, to the river, and they hung them. And that started something in Jefferson that was known as the Stockade Trials, and it went on for years and years and years. But all the information about that is actually on this marker. I do point it out because a lot of people are really into the history. And I can also tell you that we, at the end of a tour one night, we had stopped here and got some really unusual pictures that night. It was pretty crazy. When we get back after the tour's over, this man walked up to me and he said, he was from New York City or somewhere, and he said, I just wanted to let you know that several of these places, he said, you're really hitting the nail on the head. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, I've done my research. He said, no, he said, I just want you to know that. He said, I didn't talk about it in front of anybody. He said, but I'm very, very sensitive, and I feel things and I see things. And he said, in case you don't know it, you've got 4 soldiers that follow you around every time you do this tour. And I said, don't tell me that. I got to drive home by myself. And I said, why are they following us? And he said, because they find it amusing that you're that interested in them. So don't look behind you. You may have 4 soldiers following behind you. All right, follow me. This is what is known as the Schluter House, or some people call it the Schluter Mansion. First thing people usually want to know is which is the front of the house. Everyone assumes this is the front because it faces the park. That side, as we saw coming up the hill, is the front of the house because it faced the river. And you can't notice it because the tree's in the way, but when we leave, look back, because also on that side at the very, very top, you have a railing that goes around it. That's called a widow's walk, and in the old days, people would actually come to this house because from that vantage point, they were able to look down towards the river and downtown and see everything in the world that was going on down there. You would be surprised how much you can see from up there. Dr. Whitaker owned it for many, many years, and he was doing renovation work on the home. He never lived in it, and he ended up dying before he completed everything. And he was nice enough to let us go in on tours on occasion too. And I got to admit, we had some strange things happen. We would have tours where you didn't have any kids on the tour whatsoever, and we would see a little boy and a little girl in the house. People would get photographs of them. A lot of stories you hear are not true. You hear about how this house was on fire and a baby burned up in a fire. Not true. The baby they're referring to died when she was 4 months old. Her name was Mary. She died of yellow fever. There were several Schluter children that died. There was an epidemic of yellow fever here in the 1870s. The very front of the house, or the side view here as I should say, the top right-hand window, that is where the nursery used to be located. And there was a doll that was in there forever. The new owners don't have a doll up there anymore. They took it out. But it was a tradition that was started because Miss Schluter was supposedly so distraught over losing this baby after she'd lost several children that she thought when she set the doll up in the window that it appeased the crying, made her feel better because she kept thinking she could hear the baby crying in the nursery. And out of tradition, other families that have owned the home over the years put a doll in the window. Now there's a couple of the Schluter dolls on display at the museum downtown up in the garret room at the top floor. But it is a private residence now. It is not a tour home. It is not a bed and breakfast. But I do like sharing the stories here because they do talk, as I said, about a little boy and a girl. The little girl they seem to talk about more than the boy. I want to show you a photograph, and I will tell you that we were up here several years ago and we had just left to go on down around the corner to the Grove property, and a lady had kind of stood back waiting on us to get away so she could videotape with it being quiet. She had actually come with her family, and she said, I wasn't the one that was into the ghost stuff. She was trying to videotape something for her sisters that hadn't come that loved the ghost stories and stuff. So you have her standing here, and she's kind of talking out loud to herself, you know, being smart. Well, come on, little girl, come on out here so I can see you and tell me hello. And when she plays this video back, it's not what you see in the video, it's the audio. You can hear a child's voice say, why don't you just leave me alone? Now they see her in the house, they see her on the property, they see her on the park over here area, because this used to be a marketplace. It was also where the school in Jefferson used to be. Now it's just a park. They also see her inside of that house.
Yeah, Hale.
That is the Hale, H-A-L-E, Hale House. One of the Schluter children married one of the Hale children. So this was a grandparent, that was a grandparent. This too is now a private home, but it was a bed and breakfast several times over about 25-year period. Every owner of that house claimed to see this little girl. She's always described as wearing white leotards, black high-top button boots, a little pinafore, big bow in her hair, and she's usually carrying something in her hand. Now, we also had an incident with a tourist. He had no clue about any of this ghost stuff, but he's driving down the street going this way one Sunday afternoon late, and he said a little girl ran from this corner diagonally across the street right in front of him. He slams on his brakes. He thought he had hit this child, y'all. There was nothing there. He had the police up here. It totally freaked him out. And we're all thinking, yep, it's just a little girl going across the grandma's. So we have story after story after story. But what I want to show you is a picture that was taken many years ago. This was not long after we started doing our Ghostwalk tours. We were taking pictures of the properties that we included on the tour just so we could put a little picture on the Facebook page, or excuse me, the website. And it was about 5 minutes till midnight after a tour. And I was coming up the hill over here with 2 other people. I did not personally take the picture, somebody else did. But the house at that time was vacant. This side of the house at that time also did not have the enclosed porch yet. This was done in the last several years. And we have a picture of a little girl in front of this house. You can clearly see the white leotards. It's unbelievable. I'm gonna blow it up and let y'all get a look at it and see what you think. Now, if this had been 8 o'clock at night, I could almost explain it away thinking, well, maybe there was somebody there and we just didn't see him. There was absolutely nobody out here. I mean, it was midnight. Okay, and like I said, in the big picture here, you're gonna see a light in this window. That's a reflection of the street light. The house was empty. But I want y'all to start watching this spot right here. I'm gonna blow it up.
Oh my God. She's wearing a little dress.
Did you want to say?
Little tights.
Mom.
Okay, I'm gonna pull it out a minute and then I'm gonna blow it up. Can y'all see her little legs?
Yeah. Oh my god.
Also, FYI, one of the 5 places we're using during the History Haunts and Legends on the 7th of April is the Hale House. There she is. See her little legs? Watch this. See, there's the house. And there she is. Isn't that wild looking? I kept trying to figure out what else could that be. But you definitely see little legs walking. Okay, anybody not get to see it? If you're in the back and want to see this picture, just come a little closer. I don't mind showing it to everybody. See, here it is. Where you're watching. When I blow it up.
See, there's nothing?
See her little legs?
You can see her little legs. You sure can. You can.
Right there?
You sure can. Oh my God. That's, you can see her little legs.
What have you got a picture of?
She's fixing to take off running. It's just like she can, just like she's gonna take off running.
Start watching this area.
We got that right there, whatever that is, and
There's that thing.
then street going up.
Are those for eyes? Or for
No,
face?
I think that's her shoulders. Her head's right up here. I think it's light reflecting off of something right there. Did you get to see it? Yeah. Anybody else want to see it that didn't get to? Okay. Watch it. She's going to be right here, okay? Watch when I blow this up.
Mine won't let me take a picture.
Oh, now how weird is that?
Every picture I try to take
Is white?
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
like
goodness!
foggy.
And you think with as much, well, I would think with that full moon out, you ought to be able to get a picture, huh? Ooh, that's kind of spooky. All right, y'all, listen up. This is what we're gonna do now. We're gonna go back a different way. We're gonna go down the opposite hill, which puts us back on Austin Street, where we started, and we're gonna go all the way down Austin. I will stop in front of the general store in case anybody needs to use the restroom real quick. And then from there, we're going to go down and go in and go through the old mill. We'll get everybody inside, and I'll share some stories there first, and then we're going to actually go through the whole building in the dark. When we come out, I have a couple of pictures I will share, but I do not show them until you come out, or y'all will not go in with me. All right, follow me. Okay, y'all, the reason why I'm making you stop here first is I normally like to include the old Haywood House building. We're not going to walk over there tonight, but I do want to point it out and tell just real quick a little brief info. Haywood House is the building with the mural on the outside of it that says the Golden Era. That's supposed to depict Jefferson during the heyday, but the Golden Era was also the name of a steamboat that used to dock here. That was originally a 4-story hotel, so that's only about a fourth of what was originally left. And it was completed in 1865 by a Confederate general named H.P. Mabry, and he ran it with his wife and brother-in-law, and they called it the Haywood House Hotel after his wife's family. Excuse me. It was set on fire on purpose in 1872. That's why you only have the 2 stories. I'm sorry, hold on. I swallowed my gum. Not a good thing to do. Excuse me, y'all. Goodness gracious. Okay. But there is a tunnel that goes underneath the building to the river. You can also still walk in and look down. There's an iron grate and some bricks, and actually look into the old cistern of the building. And the same family owned it from when it was built in 1865 all the way up until 1962, when a man by the name of Clarence Braden died. And when he died, it started a massive treasure hunt because this man had hidden money everywhere. There was money in shoe boxes, cigar boxes, wicker baskets, butter churns. They found silver dollars rolled up in the walls. When he died at the clinic under his hospital bed, he had over $10,000 in silver dollars in his suitcase. But he would go to the coffee shop and buy coffee for everybody. He wanted change in return. It was all coins, y'all, not bills. When the high school football players would win a ball game, he'd give them all a silver dollar. And they kind of always made him out to be this hermit miser kind of guy, but he put a lot of kids through college back during the Great Depression that could not have afforded to go. He was a math professor at SMU at one time. So he was just a very quirky, eccentric person. And so I always say we have old and new history over there. Clarence had a sister named Beulah that drowned in the river swimming with a professor from their school in 1910. There was a Union officer that was staying in the hotel that had been very ill. He walks out of a 2nd-story window and fell to his death. So there's a lot of tragedy associated with the building, and there have always been unexplained things and ghost stories over there. Now, the people that own it are originally from Jefferson, and so they knew the history of it when they bought it, but it's a private residence now. In the past, it has been a museum, it's been an after-dinner theater, it's been an antique store. Now it's a private home, and it is for sale right now. A lot of people don't realize that every state, of course, has different rules and regulations, but Texas and Louisiana are both a state where if you're selling a property that is deemed to be haunted, that is considered a disclaimer, and you have to disclose the information before you can sell the property. So that one just might be for sale for a while. But I always like to point out the old Haywood House building because it does have a very interesting past. But if y'all want to follow me, we're headed down to the general store where you can use the restroom if you need to, and then we're going to head into the old mill. Follow me this direction. Yeah, there's always been crazy stories. They thought it was used for transporting.
No, there's another girl too that she couldn't take pictures over there. And she had like a good camera, not just like a little. And she's like, I've never been able to like just it would be in focus and it would say it's so mine was doing the same thing.
Oh, now that I've choked on my gum. That'll teach me to chew gum and try and talk.
Like 2 weeks ago.
A little bit of it out.
really funny.
This place is creepy in the daytime. It doesn't have to be night.
You got me wired.
I'm going to get everybody in. Now, you know what? I'm going to talk out here and then we're going to just go ahead and walk through.
You're gonna scare us first?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I will go ahead and tell you if you have a light on your cell phone and you want to use it, that's fine. I've got 3 flashlights with me because like an idiot, I didn't bring my bag. So someone that does not have a cell phone that they're going to have a light on, I want to at least get 3 lights throughout the group when we go through because there's a few lights on, but it's really pretty creepy. So here, who wants a light?
You have my
Let me give y'all one. What I want to do, I know some of y'all have been in here with me, so you can kind of let everybody know. I'm not making stories up. This place is something else. Here's somebody else want one back there. Did y'all need one back there? When y'all come out, you can really have the phone. Okay, y'all get real quiet for me, okay? Okay. Let me go ahead and tell you first off, the lady that owns this has been nice enough to give me my own key to let us come through here. We've been coming in here for years, and she used to always meet me down here, wait for us to go through, and then she'd lock up. But she does trust us to go through on her own. Like I said, she has a key. They do have security cameras that watch us, so y'all please be on your best behavior. We'd like to continue coming in here. Like I said, we've been coming in here for years. And speaking of the security cameras, they catch stuff on the security cameras all the time. I'm talking weird stuff that goes on in here. They call this the old Neal Antiques because this was originally an old mill. It was built in 1910 by a man named Isaiah Goldberg. Isaiah Goldberg was very quirky. They said he was very wealthy. He didn't trust banks. And he was known to bury money on his property. Not here, but where his house was located. Before that, all of this would have been the original wharf area of Jefferson. In fact, they have a mural on the side of this building that shows the years. And when you ask people, or when people ask us why this is so haunted, because this is a very active location, a very busy building. People say it's not what was here. It's not the, stuff that's brought in here. It's not the old mill stuff. It is the land, it's the property that's the ghostly stuff. But we have been coming in here for years, and I, get kind of the willies sometimes, but I've never really can say I saw something, but I scared myself in here not too long ago. So like I mentioned, I don't really like coming in here. And just because we got 40 people barging through here together tonight, it doesn't make any difference. This place is creepy. There are wood floors in some areas. There are concrete floors in some areas. And I'm sure when we come walking through here with a lot of people, we'll probably vibrate things. We have music boxes that play by themselves. We've had clocks that aren't supposed to work chime by themselves. A lot of old lamps, a lot of old light fixtures. Now they're actually doing some renovations in here, so they moved a lot of stuff out. So it's not as much in there right now as what would normally be in. But we had a night where there was an old Victorian light hanging down, and it started flickering like it was trying to come on. All these old women start screaming and hollering. I said, y'all, somebody's just yanking your chain. They're probably over there messing with the switch. Go turn the light on. So we turned the light on. This thing didn't even have light bulbs in it. It was not wired to work. So how this thing was flickering like it was trying to come on, I don't know. But they claimed to see a man, an older woman, and a little girl. And I've got some really interesting pictures that I will show you once we come out. This is not air conditioned. It is not heated. So in the winter it's really cold. In the summer it's really hot. Sometimes they have to shut down because it's either too hot or too cold in the building. But we had a man with us on the tour right at the end of the summer, early fall. We were going through the building and he had a thermometer. And there's always been one room in this location that is colder than any other part of the building, no matter what time of year. And he had a thermometer and he was measuring temperatures throughout the building. Most places it ranged from 89 to 94 degrees because it was still hot outside. We get to that room, it was 57 degrees in there. We always use this during our History Haunts and Legends event just because they always get evidence here. We usually like to use the big old Victorian houses that have stories that we don't usually get access to, but this is one location that we have always used because of the stories. And Michelle, which is the owner, has always told me that whatever is here, she is not afraid. She said, Jody, if I had work to do in the middle of the night, I'd come down there by myself. But when she was still meeting me down here, she would park in the back, she'd come in the back door, and she'd turn a light or two on, and she'd be waiting up here at the front. She got back there to go in one night, and she said, Jody, you know me, I'm not afraid to go in there. She got over there, and she said, I could not make myself go in there alone. She said, I just had a real weird feeling. She ends up getting in her car, drives around here. She's standing there like I just did to unlock the door to go in. And when she looked in, the man that they claimed to see in here was standing at the counter looking back at her. Now you have a set of old French doors that go through to the back of the building. And usually they're open. Occasionally when it's real cold, they might keep them shut because she does have a space heater here in the front. But we were leaving to come out one night and those doors swung open, slammed shut, and swung back open by themselves. Now the man that they claim to see in here, it's really creepy. People tell me this all the time. They'll say, you know, when we get back there in that first right corner where you turn, he's standing there watching us. They said by the time we get to the back of the building, he's back there watching us. Now, I don't usually always tell this. I'm going to tell it now. I do occasionally tell it. But they say the man that's in here does not like people coming in here. And we have people that have caught it on video, but there's also people have claimed to hear it with their own ears. You hear someone tell you, you need to go home. You need to leave. You need to get out. And so that's why at times when you walk in here, you can feel the difference. And it makes no difference if it's daytime, nighttime, if all the lights in the place are on, or if it's dark. You can go through this whole building sometimes and come out and go, well, there wasn't nothing spooky about that. Other times you get about 4 feet in this door and it's like, this is one of them nights, let's get out of here. And you just book it through here and book it right back out. So I'm going to go ahead and take us through. Y'all please do not wander off by yourself. Stay in line. We're going to go through like a bunch of ants and just come through the building, take pictures, what have you. And then I'm going to show you these pictures when we come out. But like I said, please don't wander off by yourself. I had a man the other night just want to kind of come around the corner to take a picture. Well, I'm in the front, and there's supposed to be no one in front of me. He come around that corner towards me. I like to have a heart attack. So, watch your step. Follow me. Do not wander off.
I'll go first. She's gonna let us go first. She said, "Yeah, I'll go first." I'll get up there, my granddaughter. Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
offers? They said yes.
Hi, audience.
Did you count us going in and coming out?
Well, I knew how many tickets I had, so I'm trying to count them when they come out.
Okay.
I hate to lock somebody in here.
Have you ever locked anybody in here?
No, but I always yell in before I lock it. Y'all were leaving. All right, y'all, listen up. I apologize for saying we'd be through at 10. It is now 10 o'clock. And I want to show pictures here, but we're headed back down to the Jefferson Hotel, which is right across the street from where we started the tour. And that will be the last location that we'll be talking on tonight. So we've got another 15 minutes or so. But I wanted to share just real quick, again, you can go to our website, or not our website, our Facebook page and actually pull up a lot of these pictures. But I do like to show at least one or two of the real creepy ones here to make you stop and go, This was taken in a mirror years and years and years ago. And I came back in, a guy was in here by himself, he snapped a picture, and it was 3 mirrors together. In the middle mirror, you can see the flash from where he took his photo, but in the right side, you could see someone there. Well, he's freaking out, and I'm telling him, good grief, you probably got a reflection in the glass of an old picture. Wasn't nothing there to reflect. And we went back in and checked it all out, but...
I can see that from here. Oh, it looks like Edgar Allan Poe.
Isn't that wild? And there's something, I don't know if it's a cane, a pool stick, a candle. He's definitely got something, or she, whatever it is.
I see.
Like I said, if you don't want to see it, you don't have to look. Or if you want to get a better look after you go home, pull up our Facebook page and you can see all these pictures. All right. Okay. This is another one that was taken years between these two. Also a reflection, but it is really creepy. And if you really look, to me it looks like the same shaped face.
Yeah. Like you stand there looking like
Wow, yeah.
And you notice when I lock the door, I don't ever look back in the door when I leave.
It does.
There you go. All right. Last thing I want to show, like I said, there's a lot of pictures here, but I want to show this photograph. When we head back down, we're just going to go straight down, but if you look diagonal from here, that old building right there that I'm pointing at, that is known as the old bank building. The old bank building was a bank. It was an old hospital. Been used for a lot of different things, but it's vacant. Been vacant for years. The people that own the general store own it. Yeah, I don't think it's coming this way though. One time years ago, if it does, it's usually it doesn't right here. You think it's coming this way, but it's going on the other track. Hopefully that's the way it is. Anyway, quickly, we carry lanterns when it's really cold, but they're really hot and really heavy, so I only carry them at certain times of the year. And one night at the end of the tour, we were headed back to the hotel, and I had everybody set them down in front of that old bank building. I was going to come back and get them so they didn't have to carry them. Lady came back with me to pick the lanterns up. She's taking pictures through the window. she gets a picture of someone. If this had been during a tour and someone emailed it to me, I'd think, big deal, it's a reflection of someone. She was a little bitty woman, about 70 years old, with very short, white hair. That's not her, and that's not me. Look at the very top center of this picture.
Yeah, I see it. Looks kind of like it has no nose.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Isn't that wild? This way. And you'll see the top middle, isn't that cool? So that's why I tell people, take all the pictures you want during the tour, because when you least expect it, when you don't think you have anything, that's when you're going to find something. Isn't that wild? All right, let's head across the track and head down to the Jefferson.
Yeah, my mom stays here with me.
Okay, who all's staying tonight? I knew we had quite a few. Now, don't tell me what rooms you're in yet. I know somebody's in 19. But I want to share a couple of the stories, and then we'll find out where y'all have to sleep tonight. Here. You are here. Okay, obviously we're at the Jefferson Hotel. I don't think I mentioned it before, I might have, I can't remember, but friends of mine from Houston, the Meisners, owned this back in the 90s. And when they owned it, I managed it for them, and they sold it in 1999. And they've had, I believe, 2-3 different owners now since then. But this is a location where there's a lot of hype, you hear a lot of stories, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure is probably just somebody's wild imagination. But I can definitely tell you, and you know me, I'm the skeptic, after having worked here for as long as I did, there are definitely things that are going to happen here that you're not going to find the logical explanations for. Originally, where we're standing now would have been the back of the hotel, but is now the back would have been the front because it faced the river. The posts that you see painted black around the windows and the doors here and on the sides and on the back were solid iron door frames. This was built about the same time as the Excelsior, so it's as old as the Excelsior, but it was built by the Schluter family as a cotton warehouse. It's been a hotel since 1861. Back in the 1870s, a portion of the building was known as the Crystal Palace. In fact, we had copies of one of the original deeds from that time period where it listed the number of tables and chairs and things that were in the saloon, but it also stated in no uncertain terms that the women that worked in the saloon were not allowed to use but one entrance into the building because they didn't want the reputation of the hotel soiled with these women going in and out of the saloon. Now, speaking of that, I'll throw in real quick, it's pretty funny the stuff you come across doing research. Now, what was neat to me is when I really started doing a lot of this research back in the early 80s, a lot of the old timers were still around. So I got a lot of first-hand stories from them about places that we have visited tonight. But I also was very good friends with Catherine Wise. She was a town historian, and she had boxes and boxes. Her records were phenomenal. In fact, they've donated them now to the museum and to the library, so you can still go research. But we were going through the archives of the museum, and there was a book that said Jefferson Texas Laws 1869. And it had all these new laws, these new ordinances. Shh! It said that if you were found drunk laying in the middle of the street, it would cost you so much money. It said that if you shot your gun off downtown, which you were no longer supposed to be able to do, that was going to cost you. But the one that totally cracked me up, that jumped right off the page, said that all lewd women, and that's L-E-W-D, not nude. Some idiot one night that said all nude women. All lewd women had to be off the streets of Jefferson by 9 o'clock at night, or you could be fined $10, no less than $100 at the discretion of the mayor. And I'm thinking $100 in 1869, that's a lot of money. And y'all are all very well behaved or very tired, or we do have children on the tour tonight. You wouldn't believe how many wise guys we get on this tour. And somebody's going to be looking at their watch right about now going, well, honey, we ought to be getting you in. It happens at least 80% of the tours. One person's going to say it. I get so sick of hearing that. Anyway, but a little different setup than what you have across the street. You have a code to get in or out of the building here. I'm not sure how they have it set up now, but when I worked here for a short time, the owners were on the property because they were renovating an old home. But then there's times where when you close up for the night, restaurant shuts down, front desk shuts down, and they leave and go, hey, you're the only ones here tonight. That means you and whoever you are with are the only ones in this building, okay? You're calling for assistance or coming 8 blocks away to assist you. So a little bit different feel. But the most talked about room in this hotel is going to be room 19. It's the very back left-hand corner of the building. That's room 19. And I think the local wino numbered these rooms because all the rooms that start with 1 are upstairs. All the ones that start with 2 are downstairs. But room 19, you have the water coming off and on in the old closet bathtub. They say there's a figure that hovers at the foot of the bed. The chandelier, of course, swings by itself. When I worked here, the girls that clean rooms actually cleaned the rooms in pairs because they were afraid to clean them alone. And there was a little Hispanic lady named Josephina. Bless her sweetheart. Josephina would not clean room 19. And she actually had permission from myself and the owners. She never had to clean room 19, ever. We did not make her clean the room. She was absolutely terrified of the room. Now, room 1, which is right above us here, you get casing back and forth across the room around the bed. Room 5, which is a little farther down on the right, they see a man. Now, the man is seen all over the hotel. They see an older, heavy-set woman, little bun on top of her head. They all think this is Miss Schluter. Miss Schluter ran the hotel from the early 1900s until she died in the early 30s, and when she died, they had her funeral in the lobby of the hotel. They also see a man here that fits the description of the man we talked about across the street. Tall, long duster type jacket, pants tucked in his boots. People want to assume that this is the man that was probably shot and killed in the Crystal Palace back in the 1880s. But if you stop and remember my story, the man that was shot and killed at the Kahn Saloon, it specifies in this, story that they actually carried him across the street here to the hotel where he was pronounced deceased. But in 5, they see a man more than in some of the other rooms. Family had stayed, this is a very old story, years and years ago when I was still working here. Family had a little boy, and he woke them up all night long telling them someone was in the room with him. They would have to get up, turn the lights on, and show him, see, look, there's nobody here. And he'd say, yeah, he is. And he described this man wearing the long duster type jacket with his pants tucked in his boots. They also talked, and this has been fairly recently, when I say recently, probably in the last 5 or 6 years, 2 women were staying in that room. And they're in the bathroom putting their makeup on, doing their hair to go to dinner. The other woman finishes, she's walking around taking pictures. She takes a picture in the bathroom. It's just the 2 of them. There's nobody else with them. And a man's face shows up in the mirror of the bathroom in the photograph they took. Now, I have a funny story. I haven't told this in a long time, but I have to share it real quick. Room 2 is not one you usually have a lot of stories on, even though there have been some in the past. In fact, years ago when they had the old gas units, they'd have a security guard come through at night and check the rooms. He got into a tug of war with an empty room, he says, in that room. But we had 2 older women in that room, and it had just a little just a full-size double bed. But it's an antique bed. A lot of, everything was antique furniture in there. And evidently one of them had woke up during the night, and she thought she saw someone standing there at the foot of the bed. And she's scared to death. She wants to get up and turn the lights on, but she's not doing it. So she tries to get the other woman. She wakes her up. And what she told her, she's got somebody eyeballing in the corner of the room. She's not getting up either. So they're arguing about who's going to get up and turn the lights on. And she said, grab my camera. It's right there beside the bed. So they take a picture thinking that when the flash goes off, they're going to look and see if there's anybody there. Flash goes off, they can see there's no one standing there. And then you see the picture. And at first, it's absolutely hilarious because at the foot of this bed, you have a dresser with a big mirror on the top of it. In the reflection of that mirror, you have that headboard and those 2 old women sitting up, kind of the doe in the headlight look. And you're thinking, that is absolutely hilarious. And then you see what looks like someone standing right there at the foot of the bed. One thing that I'll also throw in, I came in one morning when I was still working here. Like I said, this was back in the late 90s, mid 90s. Grumpy little old man waiting at the front desk. He said, you're going to have to do something. He said, somebody's bratty kids kept us up all night long. And I said, I am so sorry. Why in the world didn't you call me? And he said, well, we knew you had to come from somewhere else. We didn't want to bother you. He said, but we're staying again tonight, and we're not putting up with it. And yes, when you have people come stay here that have kids, they want to hunt the ghost, you got to quiet them down sometimes, And I said, well, my gosh, what were they doing? And he said, well, at first it was little stuff. He said, you could hear them giggling and running in the hall. He said, then they're standing outside of my door, bouncing a ball. bouncing a ball, bouncing a ball. He said, they start rattling my door handle. He said, that was it. So he jumps up, he opens the door, and he sees a little boy and a little girl about halfway down the hallway. He said they kind of run into one of the rooms. Well, he gets dressed. He's going to go wake up Mom and Dad. He starts down the hall, and he's sitting there looking. He said, you know, I couldn't remember for sure exactly which door they'd gone in. So he said, I'm kind of bending over and listening at the doors. And he said, I didn't want somebody to open the door and find me listening at the door at 4 o'clock in the morning. So he said, I'm going to let you handle it. And I said, I will, and I do apologize. And I came around the desk, and we didn't even use computers then. We still had the old big, thick ledger book type thing. And I flopped that thing open and looked down. Y'all, this is like a Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday night. There wasn't nobody here. I had to look this man in the eye and tell him, sir, there was no one here last night but you and your wife. So who you were hearing, I don't know. So hearing and seeing children that are not here, also common. Now, I will end with one of these stories. We had 2 women that had checked into room 21. And this is a long time ago, right after I had first started working here. And it wasn't that they didn't talk about the ghost. They just didn't really talk about it unless someone asked. So they had no clue about the ghost stuff. And during the night, they wake up. One of them had very short hair, almost like a man's hairstyle. And she said it was so cold, she was trying to decide whether or not to get up and adjust the thermostat. And she said she could feel the sheet, just kind of slide off her shoulder. She said, I pulled it back up, it kind of slid back down. And she said, all of a sudden, it was like someone had just taken their fingers and ran them through her hair like this. And she heard a man's voice say, you have beautiful long hair, which she didn't have. Woke that other woman up. I came up the next morning, they're sitting in the lobby, looked like 2 zombies. She said, we had no idea this place was haunted. We have not been back to sleep. Now, recently, the last 3-4 years or so, I had 2 women on the tour. Pretty funny. They had got that room 19 due to a cancellation. It was like Labor Day weekend or Memorial weekend. Everything in town was booked. And they, of course, didn't know the stories till they got here. They end up on the Ghostwalk tour. People find out they're in room 19. Oh, they're giving them grief. And the mother's very prim and proper, and she's kind of like, oh, we're here for the history. We don't believe in those. We'll be fine. Now, when I say mother-daughter, the daughter was a 30 or 40-year-old woman. It wasn't like a lady with a small child. And I'm thinking, yep, you just screwed yourself up. Well, they go up to the room, and the daughter, knowing her mom didn't care for the ghost stuff, was trying to irritate her. So she's videotaping on her phone, walking around the room, going, ooh. I can see myself doing this. Ooh, is there anybody hanging out here tonight with me and Mama? And then you hear the older lady kind of laugh, oh, your dad's going to hear this and think we have lost our mind. Well, they end up coming down to the lobby, and she said there was a whole bunch of people sitting around that had stayed here before, and they were all kind of rehashing stuff, and they're listening to the stories. And she said, I'm flipping through my pictures from the Ghostwalk tour. She said, I get to that little bitty clip of video that she had done upstairs with her mom. And again, it's not what you see, it's what you hear. She said you hear, as soon as she asks if there's somebody hanging around, you hear a very British sounding male voice say, why yes, my name is Basil. And then you hear the mother's voice talking over him. So all I can tell you is those 2 women didn't sleep very well that night. It's always the people that don't believe it, aren't looking for something, or that are making fun of somebody else for it, that it's going to happen to. That's just the way it works out, right? Now, I could be here even longer than I have, at some of these other places. There is story upon story upon story here. It's a neat old hotel. Excuse me, now I got the hiccups. But definitely going to be a long night for y'all because you're in 19.
We are in 19.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to fess up what room they're in? They're staying here?
2, thank you.
Ah, are you really? Yeah. And I haven't told that story in I don't know how long. So see, I did it just for y'all. I didn't even. Who else is staying here?
What about room 17?
Room 17, honestly, you're probably okay, but I do have a story on 17. 2 women had checked in, and they had, well, actually 3 women. It was a mother, daughter, grandmother, and they had a little girl with them. And I got a phone call from the owner. His wife had gone somewhere. I guess her mother was sick or something. He was here alone, and he called me, and he said, you know those women in room 17? And I said, yeah. He said, well, they're now downstairs in room 21. And I thought, well, they didn't move to any better room. Evidently, they had come back from shopping and were going to take a nap. And when they lay down to go to sleep, they said the TV kept coming off and on by itself, and that one of them had a pair of shoes sitting on the floor over by the window, and the shoes actually flew across the room by themselves. So they had asked to be moved to another room, and he moved them downstairs to 21. So, and I'm thinking, yeah, he did a good job on that one. But anyway. And which one?
25.
I do have a story on 25. 25 was kind of like the honeymoon suite. When you walk in the room, I'll tell you what you need to look for. When you walk in the room, you have 2 steps up to the bed, and they have a jacuzzi tub in that room. Now, we've got a lot of different stories on the room, but I don't know how it's set up now because it's been so long since I've been in here. Used to be when you walked in the room, there to your right, there's a marble top dresser. Okay, is it still there?
Yes.
Okay. Don't put anything on it that you don't want broke. Men will come in and put like their shaving kit over there, and they'll find it. It's like something comes up, it'll be on the other side of the room. There was a lady one time, this is broad daylight, she was in the jacuzzi tub taking a bath. And she said her husband had gone to get a newspaper or something, and she heard the door open. She looks up. There's a woman standing on that step in her room, and she described her being dressed in like a long, light-colored dress with like little flowers or something on it. She's thinking like 1920s style clothing, and she said something to the effect of, "I think you've got the wrong room." And the woman told her, "Oh, I'm just waiting on my friend. We're going to dance the night away." And she said she just disappeared right in front of her. And the reason why she was probably going to dance the night away is where the restaurant is now. Back in the old days, they used to have big dances there. Back in the 1920s, it was kind of the place to go in Jefferson. So a lot of neat just stories at these places that have nothing to even do with the ghost. Anyway, well, I'm going to wind up. I'm sorry. I did tell somebody to be through early. Yeah, it's 10:30. But I hope y'all have enjoyed the tour. I hope you learned a little of our history, some of our ghost stories. If you come back, yes, we definitely still do include the Grove property. It's kind of out of our hands sometimes as to what we have access to go into. We usually like to have at least 3 places that we can go in. We always go in the old mill. We usually have at least a certain area in this one that we can go into. They just happen to have a lot going on this weekend. And then various weekends we would do like the Kennedy Manor or different places. So we always have different places new to go in. So I hope that y'all will come back and see us. And anybody interested in the History Haunts and Legends event on April 7, you can. Yeah, it is. I'm not just saying this trying to talk you into going. It is an absolute blast. I know they've been several times too, so they can kind of fill you in on what it is. But they do have the tickets online for sale right now. If you scroll down past Ghostwalk tickets, they actually have them posted there. Or you can call and they can get y'all fixed up, okay? All right. Anybody have any questions?
I think I'm good.
All right.
I don't want to know.
Let me know if y'all have any boogers come tell you tonight.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right.